Kyle here from All Media Reviews, here to do the first of what I count will be 6 reviews. I don't know if I'll be able to get the new album, but for Pepe Deluxe, I'm going to try doing one each week, because it's like 6 weeks from this Friday that the new album Comix Sonix comes out from Pepe Deluxe, the 6th album. So today I'm going to just do this chronologically. So today I'm going to talk about Super Sound. First of all, just I don't read the whole thing. There's a pretty long Wikipedia article, but Pepe Deluxe is a Finnish electronic music-oriented band formed in 1996 by DJ Slow, Jazz, also known as Tommy Castren, formerly Pajanen, and James Spectrum, also John Salo, in Helsinki, Finland. They started to experiment with sounds of hip-hop, big beat, break beat, and downtempo with the 2000 release Spare Time Machine. The band gave up on sampling and concentrated on vintage music styles, including psychedelia, baroque pop, and surf rock. DJ Slow left the band in 2001 to pursue solo projects. Jazz has been off duty since 2008, but multi-instrumentalist Paul Malmstrom became an official member of the band in 2008. There's a longer thing about the whole history. Super Sound, Paul Malmstrom noticed it because he wasn't a member at that point. Anyway, and I've talked about them. I was introduced to Pepe Deluxe in 2012 when their album Queen of the Wave was on #1 on Rate Your Music's charts for a while there. It didn't stay there, and pop opera anyway, and it just kind of won me over, and then I just became a bigger fan. But today I'm just talking about, I have it here, the debut album, which I think I've listened to maybe one other time. So I listened to it again today. It's called Super Sound. It came out in 1999, and knowing the rest of their catalog better, especially some of the recent ones, and listening to this album is a fair amount different. There's elements that are similar or same that they would do later, but that description kind of reads. This is more centered, angled, directed toward like DJ music, some hip hop, and samples and like loops and stuff like that. You can tell, and there's other stuff on here, and I'll try to get into some of that. But you can tell why, like, recently I've discovered getting into the band The Avalanches and why they might be compared to Pepe Deluxe. This album probably the most overtly. So anyway, this album, Super Sound, it came out in 1999. I think the anniversary may have been May of 90. They have a link here. It doesn't have it. I thought that I read that it came out May of 99. Yeah, it was. So this is the 25-year anniversary of it this month, and maybe this week. So, and it came out on vinyl, I guess, initially, and then CD. And the track list is a little different on the vinyl, slightly different. But anyway, so there's songs like 3 Times a Player, Before You Leave, The Beat Experience, The Ride, Everybody Pass Me By. Let's see here. Through the Motion, La Femme, Mad Daddy, Super Sound, the title track, which on Spotify it's like a remix. I'm noticing that happening a lot with songs where it's like the song that's on there has this little extra remix. 2-ton B mix, BEE, that's what it says. Where's Mr. Fabulous, Big Muff, Moog Jam at Cafe Liberty, and then Woman in Black. So Sonora's Star remix. And then there's actually an extra track that, at least on certain versions, like the vinyl version, it's known as Woman in Blue. There's like a silence for 4 minutes and 12 seconds, then Woman in Blue. And Woman in Blue and the second track, Before You Leave, are not identical, but they're like 90-some% the same. There's a few differences. Anyway, so there's good music out here. There's some catchy music. I don't know. 3 Times a Player features voiceover. A lot of these songs feature voiceover. Some rapping, some synths. quote, "What you hear now will bring back memories to some." It's fun. It's a nice opener. The second track, "Before You Leave," which I just mentioned, "Woman in Black," is very similar. Is really catchy, and that's actually the most. It might be the most played song on Spotify. It's like #1. It may be their most famous song actually, which is weird, but it has like a New Jack Swing element at points in the drum production, some piano led themes, and then it's got this like sort of hip hop vocals that like ba ba beat to the beat y'all, and then includes like some wind chimes, some textures, some muffled distorted vocals, female vocals, which is on much of this record. There's a lot of distorted vocals, which is it's commonplace among DJ music and hip hop especially. But the female vocal is singing like a chorus, and it's got some spacey textures. Sounds like drum and bass, and the line, "How can you play with my heart? How can you tear me apart before you leave?" Or ... There's more to it. "Before you leave." I think that's more sung than said, but so the Beat Experience, the third track, is pretty good. It's got this piano sustain. It's kind of jazzy at points, and there's another voiceover, some samples, like in a British accent, "The joy of expanding." There's like this echoing of that voiceover at points. "Success is now." Yeah, there's this long speech. It sounds like from a speech or like a dissertation. "Success is now, not in 10 minutes, not the end of the rainbow. Getting there is not it." That whole thing is kind of cool. It's like post-rock. I was thinking actually like listening to the Avalanches, and post-rock almost shares a lot in common with plunderphonics, or whatever you want to call this. Parts of hip-hop and you could say trip-hop, I suppose. The synths kind of remind me of Daft Punk a little bit, or Tangerine Dreams, on that texture that they were using. So the fourth track, "The Ride," has this like high-pitched 70s sounding synths with voiceover, and then you hear these little like machine gun samples like throughout a couple times throughout the first minute or two. But then you get some lead bass guitar, which is, like on Queen of the Wave, there's a lot of lead bass guitar. It's not identical to this, like that surf rock kind of thing too. There's some nice lead bass guitar throughout the rest of the song, basically. And the drums are mixed high. Most of these songs have the drums, like the snare drum, like the hi-hat, are mixed high, and that's a common place of drum and bass and hip-hop and that kind of stuff in DJ music. And then you do hear some harpsichord, which is kind of nice. It eventually comes in, and then a funky led bass line. It's a big part of that track. So the fifth track, "Everybody Pass Me By," this is one of my favorites, although it's very different from the rest of the record. In fact, I'm not sure how much Pepe Deluxé actually did use this specific style. This track is basically like a twangy blues guitar piece. Very kind of, American blues. The twangy, I'm a sucker for twangy blues guitar. Kind of Zeppelin-esque in some ways, with the refrains and everything like that, like a blues refrain. And the vocals sound very bluesy, like old blues. The line, "Everybody pass me by, everybody pass me by," this is repeated frequently. The drums, again, are mixed high. It's in the second half, so... The sixth track, "Through the Motion," features samples and echoes and like this panning sound. It's got like a very cinematic element at points. And the snare and the hi-hat are kind of dark. It's dark. It sounds like something out of a movie, like I said, cinematic, like an 80s movie maybe. Like 70s or early 80s cinema. Yeah. Kind of like a suspense movie or a horror movie even. Or sci-fi possibly. But there's a lot of distortion, and the keys are over that this bed of it's like a dark, like two different keyboard parts, like one's dark and one's higher pitched, and then some horns come in at the end. So then the seventh track is, I think, one of the longest tracks on here, "La Femme." It's the slowest moving track. I like parts of it, but it's very gentle at the beginning, but almost new agey. The drums at the beginning sound programmed, though, which I'm not surprised. But let's see here. Where am I getting? Some skipping by the DJ, and there's some voiceover eventually that's all in French. And then parts of this, I kind of was reminded, like I'm reminded of like Air or Serge Gainsbourg because of French, of course, and the title like La Femme. But then there's like this methodical move. It's a methodical, almost like a piece from Chroma Key. The drums sound kind of gated. They add a drum layer later, and part of it does kind of have like a Phantom Cabinet, the second to most recent Pepe Deluxe album, where that narrative of like you're going on a trip. It's a sound collage, moving on a trip, an adventure somewhere, kind of like in space maybe, or into some museum or cave or something like that. But I mean, I like it. I think though it just fits on the album. I wouldn't. It's not a track I would get addicted to. It just because it's very methodical and slow, but it works for sort of as a narrative piece. It's like a backgroundy kind of piece. Anyway, so the 8th track, Mad Daddy, is only 2 minutes and 7 seconds, and this one's great. It's probably a little too short. It sounds kind of like Deep Purple, like the Hammond B3, and it sounds like a Deep Purple 60s thing. It's kind of riffy and fun, There's some voice samples again on this one, and then you hear this. It almost sounds like an ad, but I guess it's a DJ on it's supposed to be a DJ at a radio station saying rendezvous, something about rendezvous, and on WHK, and then he mentions Chuck Berry. So I thought that track Mad Daddy really worked well, even though it was only 2 minutes and 7 seconds. So then the 9th track, the title track, Super Sound. I like it a lot. That one, it's got these dark synths. It almost sounds like a Portishead or Nine Inch Nails kind of thing, like an industrial. And most of the track, the primary part, the motif in this track uses that. Although a bunch of other stuff does happen in this song. There's like staccato. There's different textures that are brought in at some point, but you frequently hear that kind of distorted, almost industrial synth part. But then eventually it gets really catchy, and then a voice is added. This is the soul vibration. It's like repeated over again. Some organ parts and fuzz guitar included. And then there's this really catchy interval pattern in the second, like the last couple minutes. It almost sounds like trumpet or horns on it. It's like a disco. I wrote it's like a 70s, like a 60s disco, or maybe 70s discotheque. The title track is one of the best tracks on here. I'd say that track and Mad Daddy are two of the best songs on this album. So we go moving on to track number 10, Where is Mr. Fabulous? This is just like an interval piece. It's only a minute too. It's just some upright bass. It's very jazzy, and there's some whistling just to get into the next track, Big Muff. And Big Muff was okay. It has like this drum part that the opening sounds like Walk This Way from Aerosmith a little bit. But you get some rapping it's like a call and response, like a repeated thing from a rapper and like a crowd. I don't know if it was actually recorded with a crowd, but you hear the crowd. He says, number one, say number one, say I feel, and then the crowd keeps on repeating, say I feel, or I feel, say real good. So number one, I feel real good. Basically, he's trying to get the rapper's trying to get the crowd to say that. Some fat synths are in this after that part, and then what sounds like almost like a bassoon or something like that, but it's probably just a patch on a keyboard, but it's that same texture that a bassoon makes. You get a lot of pitch bending on that, which there's a few tracks on here that they frequently, with the keyboard, they're bending the pitch and everything. The line "Come on, work it, come on now, work it." Has that rhythm, and then the rhythm is kind of driving the end of this song, or drum led with loops and a little jazzy guitar on that. So I like Big Muff. I think it's okay. I think compared to the two proper tracks before, it wasn't quite as good, but it has some moments at least. So the last two tracks, Moog Jam at Cafe Liberty, more pitch bending is featured. Some of it, though, this is the strangest track on the record. This is one I would not probably listen to just on its own, typically. A lot of sort of angular, if it's the song I'm thinking of, yeah. Sounds like it's recorded backwards, like an angular recording of some sort of like a guitar part. There's some chanting at points and some synthesizers, but the drums are methodical. Sounds like an LSD trip almost in some ways. There's a little bit of like Porcupine Tree from the '90s. I'm thinking like Signify era. That kind of reminds me a little bit of this, but yeah, it's this thing. It feels like it's in slow motion. The line, "We're happy to have you with us." Oh yeah, there's a sample at the end. "We're happy to have you at this point and hope you come back often." I mean, I like parts of it, but I think that it's just so avant-garde, for lack of a better way to put it. It kind of sticks out a little bit like a sore thumb on this record. So then the final track, "Woman in Black," featuring Sonora Star. Just like an atmospheric track with a lot of vocal distortion, but the vocals are just so low in the mix, they're not really featured that much. There's some cello on it, and some what sounds like violin at the end. The ending is probably my favorite part, actually. I like moments of it, but I wasn't, attached to. I'm not that impressed by that track as a closing track, but I can sort of understand why they wanted something a little purely atmospheric as the last track on this record. So then, of course, I mentioned "Woman in Blue" on one version. There's a track that's 4 minutes and 12 seconds, and then 5:32. But "Woman in Blue," like on the vinyl, is the second track. But Before You Leave, because they had released an EP in '98, I guess this came out in '99, May of '99. But they released an EP titled "Woman in Blue" in '98. So I think they just reworked it. It's not identical, but it's very similar. There's less distortion. It has voiceover. That's about the biggest difference, and the length is slightly different, like 5:32 versus 5. I can't remember how long before you leave. How long is before you? 5:33. Well, actually, 5:33. Actually, no, because I had them both next to, and there's a slight difference, but they're almost the same length. So that's my overall. That's all the details on Super Sound. I'll get into, and talk about maybe a little bit of the differences and show some of my physical copies that I've done in previous videos with Pepe Deluxe's other records. But it's a debut album, and I can see why it was different. Some of the membership and the approach was different. They were probably influenced by a lot of trip hop, the mid to late '90s hip hop and rap probably. That was when DJ Shadow was really getting big, and Paul Oakenfold not that long after. So they were, among that kind of that genre per se to some degree. But obviously James Spector, I always get the two of them mixed up. Spector and Malmstrom, I think, as I mentioned earlier. Spectrum, after this, Spectrum, Paul Malmstrom became, yeah. So it was mainly Spectrum. James Spectrum's the original member that's still with the band. Obviously, he was influenced by a lot, but Malmstrom obviously liked this album. You can sort of see some of the elements they would bring in later that they took from their experience and what they did with Super Sound. And I can see among like people that like DJ, hip hop, rap, trip hop, electronic music. The only thing that's the thing I would see they probably would like this album. They might like this album the most among their whole catalog potentially. I don't know, I think that's the thing. I always thought that this record was. I didn't listen to it. I didn't find the desire to because I thought it was almost a purely electronic album. I thought it was kind of like Daft Punk and it is a little bit. But it has its moments. It has its catchy moments. Has some interesting instrumentation, and there's a few hooks on it. I mean, among the Pepe catalog, where would I put it? I don't do a ranking per se, but I at this point, even let's say I was more familiar. If I become more familiar with it, I still don't know if I would put it ahead of anything. But songs like "Before You Leave" is super catchy, even though it's very hip hop driven. The Ride as well, and like I said, the Ride was the Ride one. No, that's not the one. The track that the twangy blues. Everybody passed me by. That is definitely if I was doing a Pepe ranking, I would have to include that somewhere. And then those two tracks in the second half, the title track and Mad Daddy, are some of the best music that James Spectrum ever did or whatever. So, but if you heard Super Sound from Pepe Deluxe, what do you think? And again, looking forward to looking forward to going through the rest of their catalog over the next 6 weeks. I don't know if I'll be able to get Comix Sonix reviewed, listened to and reviewed. I could do an early review. I don't feel like it'd be the proper review, but I don't know. That Friday on the 21st of June. But anyway, I'd love to hear about that. Thank you for watching. I'm going to do Kevin Gilbert's Live at the Troubadour probably tomorrow. But thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.